Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's another fantastic day to discuss other people's excellence. It is Easter Sunday, so it is a great day, a perfect day to discuss other people's excellence. I am the unforgettable one himself, Mr. Brett Carroll, and I'm just a guy that likes BSing at work. And I'll tell you what's not BS. The amount of work I put in for this 7 round mock draft. It's the final mock draft because it's draft week, baby. Thursday is the draft. And so we have to do our final mock draft. 7 rounds, every team, every round, every pick with trades. This was a haul to make, but I'm so glad I did it. Wasn't nearly as bad as last year. I was able to pace myself a little bit better this year. But yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna get right into it. Real quick, because I know some of y'all, a lot of y'all probably don't want to watch this whole thing. The way I did it is d by division. So if you're like me, most of the time you just want to see your team and then maybe some of the other teams in your division. So it's all about division. And I did it by draft order. So first division is the AFC South because of the Titans. Second division is the AFC North because of the Browns. Third division is the NFC East. Fourth division is the AFC East. Fifth division is the AFC West. And then we had NFC South, NFC North. NFC West, okay? So, because I don't think it's gonna have the little time descriptions on the bottom. So just so you know, that's the block. First block, AFC South. Second block, AFC North. Third block, AFC NFC East. Fourth block, AFC East. Fifth block, AFC West, and then NFC South, NFC North, NFC West in that order. So that way you could just scroll through and you kind of know where you are and where your team will be. And again, it's in draft order. Um, so if you know where your team is drafting first in the first round, you'll have an idea of where you guys are uh in the video. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right. First up is the Tennessee Titans. And what I did first pick in the draft, we're going Cam Ward. We know what this is going to be. Very easy to figure that out. With their second pick, I went Jaden Higgins. I figured that could be their T. Higgins type of player in this offense, the Callahan offense, what they want to run. And then I did something I've heard other people say if they could try to get Kyle Williams, that'd be great because of the Cam Ward connection. I said, I kind of like that. So I traded with the 85th pick and got Kyle Williams. And then at 141 got Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma, get them that linebacker help they need. At 167, I got Quandarius Robinson, try to shore up that defense now that I got some of the key playmakers on offense settled in. At 178, Jalen Travis from Iowa State to help with that offensive line. Then back with the defense with Tyler Baron Edge out of Miami. And then at 208, I got them a backup quarterback with their last pick. It seems like they're going to try to move on from Will Levis if they need to. So I just wanted to give them, just some type of backup quarterback potential guy there. So that was the Titans draft. All right, the Jaguars. They had a lot of picks, but I like what I did here. Five Mason Graham, 36 Luther Burden. I really like that. He was falling. I thought it'd be a really good addition to that offense to replace Christian Kirk. So I'd be that Chris Godwin type of player in that offense. Andrew Makubo at 70. They need some defensive back help. Plus, he was like the best player available. Mason Taylor, tight end from LSU. Evan Ingram is gone now. Get them some more, even more playmakers in that offense. Again, they still have why can't I think of his name? Trevor Lawrence. You want to make sure this offense is humming in all cylinders. Get him some more help there. At 107, Joshua Farmer, defensive lineman. Again, best player available. Plus, you know, ramping up the defensive line along with Mason Graham, along with the edges they already have. I kind of like that idea. Brashard Smith at 142 to try to. I know they have Trevor Etienne, but there were rumors that they might uh try to, or Travis Etienne, sorry, that they might want to trade him. They got Tank Bigsby, so I figured get them some more running back helps if they do want to move on from Etienne. I'm at 182 again. At this point, I'm trying to just figure out what to do with all these picks. I got them Ryan Fitzgerald. He's a kicker from Florida State. They might be familiar with him. You can never go wrong with with having decent special teams. So went with that. At 194, Luke Kondra from Cincinnati. Again, trying to bolster up that offensive line, making sure that they're good on that front. At 221, Elijah Badgers, wide receiver, Florida. Badgers, I believe, is he's like a bigger threat at the wide receiver position, just giving them something a little bit different in their offense than what they currently have. So I just wanted to throw that in there again, especially at 221. Take a flyer on a guy like this who has some potential that you could possibly utilize. All right, the Colts took Tyler Warren. I think this is the pick everybody's expecting him to take at 14. At 45, I liked Notre Dame safety Xavier Watts staying in Indiana. Um, I know they did some things in free agency with the back end of their defense, but again, having a nice young safety never hurts. At 80, Jack Sawyer for edge help again. At the time, I love the value. Went back to Notre Dame with Jack Kaiser at 117, again, bolstering that defense, making that be their staple of the team. And then at 156, I traded to get Tyler Cooper, uh, bolstering that offensive line. They could use some depth there. Did they lose their guard this year? I can't remember, but they could definitely use some help on the offensive line. Went back with Malachi Moore with safety. I know I'm double dipping at safety, but at 189, it was like he was best player available, and I was like, I kind of like it, so I went there. At 229, again, trying to add some more pieces on that offensive line, if nothing else for depth pieces with Jake Majors, and a trade there. And then at 232, uh, Corey Kiner from Cincinnati, just best player available, give them some depth behind Jonathan Taylor at the running back position. I like it. The Texans at 25, I knew going into this, we wanted to make sure we got that offense line right. So that's what I wanted to do. So at 25, we got Josh Connerly Jr. At 58, we got Tyler Booker. At 79, Isaiah Bond was still on the board, and I said, why not? We got to take him. At 103, in a trade, I got Emory Jones, who could be another guard for you if he doesn't work out at tackle. But either way, you're bolstering up that offensive line. You have to protect CJ Stroud, especially after losing some of your key offensive line pieces in the offseason. At 22, DJ Giddens, out of running back out of Kansas State. Again, I know they have Joe Mixon, but just adding some more running back depth, adding another dynamic to that offense. Uh, just another way of keeping CJ Stroud clean, right? If you can bolster on the running game some more as well. So I thought that was a good pick. At 166, Jordan Hancock, safety out of Ohio State. I just figured he was best player available to me on the board, and I figured that defensive-minded head coach is never going to uh, shy away from adding more defense. 236, Chimere Dickey from Florida. Uh, Another wide receiver that again, it's more like a deep threat type of player, something that gives them a little bit different on their offense. I know they have Nico Collins, but still with losing Stephon Diggs, with the injury to Tank Dell, adding some more wide receivers is probably a good bet. And at 241, again, Za Frazier from UTSA, just best player available. And again, adding to that cornerback, to that defensive back room is never a bad thing, especially in the AFC where you're going to be playing some of the best quarterbacks and some of the best offenses. All right, the Browns. Okay, hear me out here because I know some of y'all probably seen that second pick and saying, "Are you kidding me?" But just hear me out. Travis Hunter at two, and then I had them trade up to back up to 20 to get Shador Sanders. To me, I can't get over the fact that Myles Garrett re-signed after making a big fuss. And I know everybody's like, well, of course he resigned to give him $40 million. Dollars. But for me, it was like he was going to get $40 million dollars anywhere, right? So why go back to the Browns? Any contender would have traded for him and gave him $40 million dollars. So why go back to the Browns? And I gotta believe that they sold him on the idea of quarterback in this draft. They sold him on the idea that they really like some of the quarterbacks in this draft. And it might not have been Shador personally. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I know they like Shador because Kevin Stefanski came out and said that he thought that Shador would be great in their system. And I think what has happened is now that we've gotten closer to the draft and all this talk about how Shador could slide, I think that's why they've pivoted into saying, hold on, we think we could take Travis Hunter at two, let Shador slide a little bit, and then go back up and get him. And so now we have both. And I think that's the plan that they want. I think that's part of the plan that they sold Myles Garrett on is maybe either taking either Travis or Abdul Carter at two and then moving back up into the first round and getting a guy they like in their system. I gotta believe that was the plan. I gotta believe they sat him down and they said there's at least two or three guys in this draft that they think will be great in their system. We know Shador is one of them. And so now that Shador is supposed to be slipping a little bit, this is where they can get Shador Sanders. Um, so that was the thought process there. 94 Cam Scatterbo, running back out of Arizona State, just getting some running back help that they desperately need. Again, making sure this offense is potent. We know the defense is good. They have to get a consistent offense, which is why at 104 I got Pat Bryant. Again, he's a bigger possession type receiver, something a little bit different that could add another dynamic to that offense. A guy that I think Shador would love to throw to as well as Travis Hunter, obviously. And so that's what I did there. At 148, I traded to get Denzel Burke. I thought the value was great. This guy was supposed to be a first round pick. You know, didn't have the greatest of years, but at 148, I love what the value there. Um, and also what I did by getting Pat Bryant, and also you'll see I got Jimmy Horn to complete kind of like the Colorado connection. If you're going to take a guy like Travis Hunter, right, and he wants to play both sides of the football, fine. You obviously want him starting. You obviously want him finishing games for you on both sides. Getting depth at wide receiver and corner is key because that way you can have him take off a series here on defense or a series here on offense. Keep him fresh because again, you want him starting every game, obviously, but you also want him closing, right? If you need a 2 minute drive to win the game, you want him on the field as your wide receiver. If you have to stop a 2 minute drive to stop a team from scoring, you want him on the field as your corner. So in those in between quarters again, maybe he only plays offense for a little bit or only plays defense for a little bit, which means you're still going to need corner help, which means you're still going to need wide receiver help to kind of mitigate that because you don't want him playing both sides of the ball every single game, all game. He won't last more than 3, 5 years in the league. That's not why you draft him number two overall. So if you're going to draft him and if you're going to utilize him as a star corner and a potential star receiver, you have to get depth at both sides of the ball to help, mitigate his snap count a little bit. So that's why I got Denzel Burke and Pat Bryant and Jimmy Horn to kind of use as those pieces to help you out in on that side of the ball, on both sides of the ball. And in between there, I got Max Brosmer, a guy that could, should be able to work in that system as well as a good backup to Shador Sanders. Um, and then last pick, 254 are Arande Gazdin, the second out of Syracuse. A really good tight end. Again, at 254, I thought the value was amazing and somebody that I thought would do well. Again, adding depth to that offense. I know they have Njoku, but having another tight end that can help out in that offense will be critical. Next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. At 17, I went Donovan Ezaraku, edge from BC. I wanted to make sure they need defense bad, and so I wanted to address the defense as much as possible because their defense was horrible last year. So that was the biggest thing. Um, at 49, I went Ariase Ursary. because they also need to protect uh Joe Burrow, and he's a tackle, but he could probably play guard for them. And then hopefully he still has tackle upside if need be. Bolstering that offensive line is important. Like both sides of the line need help. They've kind of built their team backwards. You usually built it from the trenches up. They got the important skill position players first. Now they need to shore up both lines because both lines have been hurting them these last couple of years. At 81, Chris Paul, linebacker from Ole Miss. Again, getting some linebacker help, a really good value here, along with Ty Robinson to bolster that defensive line. Again, that defensive line was terrible. They could not stop the run. They couldn't get pressure besides Trey Henderson, and he wants to be traded because they can't even think of a deal. Um, that's another reason why I got Donovan Ezraku. Even if they figure out a way to re-sign Henderson, getting somebody that can help him on the other side of football, on the other side of the line would be great. Um, at 155, traded for RJ Mickens, safety out of Clemson. Again, great value. Somebody that can help them. They've been missing a safety since Bates left. Uh, at 155, that's tremendous value. At 193, Taj Brooks, running back from Texas Tech. Again, it was kind of best player available. Plus, Chase Brown was good for them last year, but adding another running back to that offense, adding another dynamic, allowing them to pound the rock when they need to, because I think that was another problem. You're throwing all the time, and Joe Burrow was turning the ball over sometimes in key opponents, and let Shannon Sharp tell you that was like the worst thing he could have ever done. Being able to run the ball when they need to and slow the game down a little bit instead of always having to win in a shootout, I think was perfect. Is a good way to help this football team. And again, at 193, that's great value to get Taj Brooks, a really good running back prospect. And then once again, 224, Jaw Joyner, from Minnesota. Um, another edge prospect and best player available. And again, trying to just bolster that defensive line as much as possible. Because even if they get Henderson back, they need all the help, the pass rush help they can get. All right, with my Steelers, you're gonna see a lot of T's, T's, because I was moving up and down the board. Okay, at 30, I traded down. So, spoiler alert, if you're going to watch the Bills draft slide, and non-spoiler if you're not. I trade with the Bills to get their second round pick. The reason being they had two second round picks. And spoiler, I had them trade up to get the guy I wanted in Kenneth Grant. So because of this, the negotiation was basically, all right, give us your second round pick. We won't take the best one, we'll take the worst one. And normally that would have probably cost us sending back at least our seventh, but we didn't do that because we're trading down 9 spots, because you have two first round picks, because they had a lot of picks to begin with, and because we know you're trading up to get one of the guys we want. If you want to make this deal, give us your second round pick without us throwing in another late round pick, which is what I was able to do. Again, I didn't take I think they had 58 and 62. I took 62. I didn't take 58. So I moved back and I took a Marion Hampton running back out of UNC. Now, if I'm being honest with you, out of all the guys we could take in the first round, this is probably the one I want the least. I wouldn't be that mad about it, but like I'd rather get defensive line, me personally, be, especially the reason why I did it is because I haven't tried this approach yet in a mock draft for the Steelers. So I wanted to at least see what getting a running back would be. I was gonna do another Steelers mock last week. I just didn't have time in which I could experiment with this better. But I was like, I'll do it now just to switch it up. And it's funny, this running back class is so good that towards the end of a lot of these mocks, I was giving running backs to people because I was like, yo, there's so many good running backs. Like, these guys gotta get taken. Um, and so I kind of don't like this approach at all. Even though I like Amari and Hampton, even though I think he's going to be a beast, even though I think he's worth the pick. For us specifically, I don't know. But anyway, what plus not to mention we just got rid of Najee, who's another first round running back that we drafted. I'm a big believer in not drafting a running back in the first round unless you literally are only a running back away from being great. Um, yeah, any Giants fan that knows me knows that was my main thing about drafting Saquon. I'm like, you guys are not a Saquon Barkley away from being good, and they weren't. And we see the difference, right? We see he goes to a good team, and he's the difference maker to help them win a championship. Where on the Giants, as great as he wasn't really helping them win because they were nowhere near ready to insert a superstar back to be great. The Steelers are a little bit closer to that than the Giants. I get it. And we do really need a running back. And I do think Amari Hampton could be a star in the league, especially if our offensive line is better. But I'll be honest, this is not my favorite pick. But I said if I'm going to do it, I have to trade back. I'm not going to take him at 21. If I trade back and I get him, great. That was another reason I'm trading back at the way the board fell. Even though I knew the Bills were going to come and take Kenneth Grant, there were still a couple of guys I liked. So I said, you know what, at 30, either one of the defensive linemen will fall to me, or he will fall to me, or if we really need to take a quarterback should be there. But he was still there, so I was able to take Amari Hampton. So then at 62, the pick that I got from the Bills in that trade back, I was able to get Darius Alexander from Toledo. So cool. I still got my eventual Cam Hayward replacement. I like Darius Alexander a lot. He has a lot of things that the Steelers are gonna like. I also know they recruit the Mac heavily, so I'm sure he's on their radar. I'm sure there's a guy that they know about. He's a little bit older, which is why I think it's possible that he will slip to 62, especially in a loaded defensive line class where you could be a little bit nitpicky. So, but I love the value here, getting him at 62. And then at 83, Alfred Collins, a guy who will come in and be a nose tackle from day one, a run stuffing nose tackle from day one, still has some pass rush upside, but for right now, you plug him in there on first and second down to stop the run, and we needed to stop the run. And when you play a team like the Ravens twice, at least twice a year, you need a guy that, if nothing else, he can stop the run. So I love that pick for us. At 128, I got Brandon Crenshaw Dickens from Florida in another trade. I believe this was another trade back, if I remember correctly. Um, Bolstering that offensive line again. If we're going to take a guy like a Murray Hampton in the first round, we have to make sure our offensive line is good. Because this doesn't work if it's not. And I know we want to be a run first team, even if we get Aaron Rodgers, even if we don't, even if we take a quarterback next year in draft. I know we're trying to be a run first team. You have to make sure your offensive line is good. So I added some more offensive line help to bolster that line. 151 to trade again for Savion Williams. This is a guy that I know Arthur Smith is going to love. He reminds me of an even more juiced up Cordell Patterson. He's not a real wide receiver. He's a weapon. They're not going to use him in the passing game much. He'll be a wildcat player. He'll be another running back. He'll be a gadget guy. Um, and then maybe when they go five wide, they'll pull him in as wide receiver because he's just an athletic freak. And if nothing else, you just tell him to run straight down the field as fast as you can, and we'll throw it up to you. Because he can do that. He's just not a good route runner. He doesn't know how to play receiver yet. But this guy is an athletic freak who's tall. You just can't teach what he has. He has everything you need. He has a super athleticism. He has great height. He has great frame on him. He just doesn't know how to be a receiver yet, but he'll be an amazing athlete and gadget player, and that's what we'll use him for. And maybe we can develop him into a receiver down the line. But I love the fit in our offense. At 185, Corey Brooks, he is more of a true receiver, a guy that you could develop in case you have to trade George Pickens. I don't want us to trade George Pickens, but this does give you some more depth at the receiving core, which we need anyway. Our receiver room was not great at all last year. Even though we have DK Metcalf, that's great. I still think adding a receiver later on in the draft was a good idea just to add some much needed depth in case somebody gets hurt or whatnot. Um, or you need to make a trade, you still have guys that can contribute. Because again, Savion Williams is not that. He's not a receiver. He's going to be a gadget guy. So you're not looking to him to add to your quote unquote receiver room yet. Ja'Cory Brooks is a guy that's actual depth at the wide receiver position. Um, at 211, and part of that trade back, we got Jabbar Muhammad, cornerback out of Oregon. We brought in Darius Slay, but he's probably a 1 year rental. You still want a guy that you could develop long term. This is a guy that could play inside and out, in my opinion. Good cornerback depth, and again at 211 is great value. A guy that maybe could contribute to you in the future. Um, 239, Shiloh Sanders. He was still there on the board. I decided, take him with one of the picks. Safety depth is also important for us. Um, and he's a guy that has really good instincts in zone coverage when we play zone coverage, and a guy that when we play that three safety look, he's a guy that you could put in there and feel comfortable with that and let Minka kind of roam around and be a joker type of player. And then at 247, with our last pick, Donovan Smith was still on the board. This guy, again, has all the tools and traits that you want. He just doesn't know how to be a quarterback yet. But again, he's a seventh round guy that maybe you could develop into something. Not maybe not a starter, obviously, but but hopefully a high quality backup for you in the future. Again, big, strong guy, strong arm, got some of the all the traits that you want in a quarterback, but just needs time to develop. And so in the seventh round of 247, why not? So that's what I did for the Steelers. All right, the Ravens. I just said, what will the Ravens do on draft day? And that's just take best player available and piss me off. So that's what I did. What I said, what pick will piss me off the most? And this is what I got. James Pierce Jr. at 27. I could see them taking him and embracing the fact that this guy was supposed to be a top five pick and embracing the fact that they are crapping on his character. They're saying he's not a leader. They're saying he don't care about football, blah, 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 blah. I could see them just drafting him and embracing him and getting the best out of this guy. And he becomes a superstar for their team. I could just see it. I could just see it. So that's the first round pick. At 59, Tate Ratledge. Um, Todd Monken obviously worked with him when he was still at Georgia. They do need to bolster that line a little bit, and he will help with that. Lathan Ransom at 91, getting another safety in there to pair up with Kyle Hamilton. They needed some help in the back end last year, so doing that was good. Also with Jason Marshall Jr. at 129. Again, I thought it was just great value. A guy that I think they could come in and develop and be a really good corner for them. At 136, Johnny Cornelius was still on the board. And so they were able to get him and maybe be their future tackle. At 176, Kanata Mumfield out of Pittsburgh. Bigger receiver, something that they kind of need. They don't really have that in their offense. A guy that just gives Lamar Jackson a little bit bigger of a target to throw to. At 183, Khalil Mullins. Again, I just thought it was best player available. Somebody they could run the ball with so that Derrick Henry could take some plays off. He's from Michigan, so I'm sure Harbaugh, has some type of uh, you know, tape on him just because of his brother. So it made sense. At 203, Jake bringing Stool. We know what happened with Mark Andrews last year. They're trying to move over with Lively or likely. I'm sorry, but this guy's another guy you could bring in and potentially be your Mark Andrews replacement for the future. I'm at 210, Tyler Beatty, edge from BYU. Just again, just best player available. I had them go back to back edges because they were just best players available. And at 210 and 212, I was like, why not? Just continue to make that defensive line great. And I think they saw what Philly did. And I think they're saying if we're gonna ever get past the Chiefs, we need to borrow some of that. Having just a great defensive line that can, hurt and that their offensive line and pester Patrick Mahomes is the key. So this is what they do. And at 243 again, I was just running out of picks. I don't think they would do this. I don't think they would have the heart to do this Justin Tucker, but he did struggle last year. And so maybe at 243 you say to yourself, hold on, if we can get a guy in here just in case Justin Tucker is still starting to slip a little bit. He's been doing this for a long time. He's one of the greatest ever to do it. Again, I don't think they would have the heart to do that to him, but Bringstool and Caden Davis were to me like, well, if we have to replace two of our legends, let's start doing that now, while Lamar is still in his MVP mode, and we rather replace him a little bit early than a little bit late. So that was the thought process between 203 and 243. Now, again, I don't know if they have the heart to do that, but I just thought it was a good idea to do it. All right, on to the Giants. Again, I really like what they did here. So at three, we took Abdul Carter, easy work. Whoever felt you at three, that's who you take. At 34, Jackson Dart was still on the board. I think you do. I think they do still do need to take a quarterback because both Russell Wilson and Winston, I'm sorry, are 1 year options. This is perfect. Jackson Dart doesn't have to start for you. Um, because if you're Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, you're hoping you have a good year anyway, so that you're not in the quarterback sweepstakes next year, right? So having Jackson Dart on the team, not having to start, can learn behind two veterans. I love that for them. Marcus Bowe is out of Purdue. He's a tackle, but he'll probably play guard for them, and he'll probably be a really, really, really good guard for them. So I love that at 65, great value. 99 Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech. Um, Again, just love the fit there. Makes a lot of sense to add to that corner room. They need some corners. At 105, Jordan Phillips. Again, great value. Adding to that defensive line. They already have a really good defensive line. Now you add Abdul Carter and Jordan Phillips. Yikes. Again, you saw what Philly did. They're in your division. You know what I mean? Like it's a copycat league. Oh, you want to have a defensive line that just has monsters at every position in rotation? We're gonna have a great defensive line that just has monsters at every position in rotation. I love it. Um, at 154, Holland Pierce from Rutgers, just a mountain of a man, a mountain of a man. He could be your tackle of the future. If you gotta develop him a little bit, but this is I love that fit there, keeping him in the Garden State. Same with Colin Monangai, a good complementary piece to Tyrone Tracy. Um, Monungai's a Rutgers legend now, and keeping him, he'll be a fan favorite if they drafted him. So I like that. And then Bo Collins, adding to that receiver room. He's a bigger receiver. Um, Obviously, I'm Malik Neighbors, and they brought back Shepard, but again, Bo Collins is more of like a bigger threat, downfield type of contested catch type of guy. So just a different element to the offense, and I love that 246. It's great value. The Cowboys. All right, so at 12, I took Tedero McMillan. A lot of people were having them take Matthew Golden. They said, oh, he's a great compliment to CeeDee Lamb. And to me, I just don't get it. To me, he's another CeeDee Lamb. There's nothing wrong with that, right? The only thing better than one CeeDee Lamb is two CeeDee Lambs. I get it. But to me, if you're going to compliment somebody, give me a receiver that's a little bit different from what I already have. And that's what T-Mac is. He's a big receiver. He's a downfield threat, but he also could play inside. He likes those slant routes. He likes those drag routes. So you can still use him in inside out versatility if that's what you were looking for. But again, just a different type of receiver, um, a different look for defenses to have to deal with instead of having two of the same guy. So I went with T-Mac over Matthew Golden here because I just thought that made more sense to me. I'm at 44. I took Donovan Jackson. They need to bolster that offensive line. If I wasn't going to go receiver, I was going to go offensive line in the first round. They value offensive line. They've always have. Um, and with them losing their guard, I believe, uh, taking a guy like Donovan Jackson, who probably could play guard for them right now, I thought it was a great move. At 76, Damian Martinez. They need running back help. I love Damian Martinez. This is a guy that for the Steelers, I would have loved to take. Like, if I didn't take Amari and Hampton in the first round, this is the guy I would have targeted in that third round. Um, Love his game. I think he would. I think he would play really well behind that Dallas offensive line. So I love that for them. At 149, Baron Sorrell, edge from Texas, just again bolstering that defensive line. I'm gonna say it again. When you're in the same division as the Eagles, you might want to copy what the Eagles are doing. So adding some edge help, bolstering that defensive line is huge. Caden Prater, wide receiver out of Maryland. Again, just adding to that receiver room. So that they desperately needed receiver help. So you're hoping with CD and now T-Mac and now Prather, you got a nice little trio to work with. Um, yeah, a really nice trio to work with for Dak Prescott. Jared Harrison Hunt from SMU, again, bolstering that defensive line. You know, they kind of struggled a little bit last year, so they want to get back to having a dominant line and a dominant defense. This will help do that. Obviously, SMU is right there, so I'm sure they have tape on him. I'm sure they're familiar with him. At 205, Rocket Sanders just made a lot of sense with value-wise at 205. I said, yeah, I gotta get this guy drafted. Um, and I know I already got them Damian Martinez, but I was like, I kind of like that 1-2 punch in the backfield for them. You know, if you're not going to take a running back in the first round, having two really good running backs makes a lot of sense. And again, gives a different dynamic to that offense. When you're a balanced offense, you're that much more dangerous. So now I just got you potentially three good receivers because you already got CD, and now you got T-Mac and Caden Prather, and now I got you two good running backs, potentially two great running backs behind that offensive line. You see it. And then what I do, Jackson Hayes or Hawes, tight end out of Georgia Tech, adding another weapon, adding something, you know what I mean? So you see what we're doing here. We want this offense to be consistent. We want this offense to be dangerous. We want this offense to be balanced. So that because you're paying Dak all this money, you need to give him the weapons necessary for him to be a top quarterback in this league. Even if he's not technically a top quarterback in this league, the numbers need to reflect it. His consistency needs to reflect it. This is how you do it. So I love what we did here. A lot of offense to make this offense more consistent, more balanced, more dangerous. But then what do we do on defense? Defensive line, defensive line, defensive line, edge, defensive line, winning in the trenches, and we're good there. And then also, like I said, adding some depth to, adding another piece to that offensive line so that it all comes together. You do that, Dallas should be a dangerous team. All right, the Commanders. They didn't have a lot of picks, so I tried to work with what I had. But at 29, Nick Scorton, edge out of Texas A&M. I just love the fit. They need some edge help, and so I was able to do that for them. And I think that's going to be great for them. At 61, Quinshon Junkins made a lot of sense. He was slipping it a little bit. Um, again, just adding another dynamic to that offense, uh, adding more balance. Again, I'm gonna keep saying it. You're in the same division as the Eagles, right? Balanced offense, insane defensive line and defense. That's what wins games. This is what you have now. Quincy Riley in the trade, I was able to get him at 123, add to that corner room that they really need. And that 245 Theo Weeks just made a lot of sense. Again, at giving them another weapon and yeah, that they needed. If they had more picks, I probably would have went wide receiver earlier, but they just didn't really have the necessary picks to do that. I had to trade to get Quincy Riley. Um, but yeah, I like Theo Weeks at 245. I think it's a good pick, somebody that could come in and hopefully contribute. Maybe not day one, but a young guy that you could add to the mix that could be part of your team going forward. All right, the Eagles. The Eagles were interesting because they don't really need much, so I just said let's just have fun with them. 32 Malachi Starks, Georgia guy that falls to them. Why not? Why not? A chess piece that they can use along with Cooper DeJean on that back end of the defense. Yeah, yeah, why not? 64 Harold Fanning, getting them another tight end super weapon. Along with Jack Beck. So now they have that. Now they have like the middle of the field taken care of. They got two monsters on the outside, but now they can attack you more directly in the middle of the field. Why not? At 120, I trade up for Jalen Milroe, a guy that could be the perfect backup for Jalen Hurts. You could develop him. He's obviously not going to play. And I saw this in another mock draft, and it made a lot of sense. And the thought process is they're going to be blowing out a lot of teams. Having Jalen Milroe come in and just run some of these packages so that Jalen Hurts doesn't have to do it. He can run some of the tush pushes. He can run some of these QB options. He can run some of the play action stuff. Again, just trying to keep Jalen Hurts fresh for the playoffs. I love that idea. And then if he develops into the quarterback that he could be, because again, this was a guy that was supposed to be in the running for the first pick in the draft. We see the upside. He's just not there as a quarterback yet, right? But the traits are all there. If he does develop into something, then you have a good problem on your hands, right? You could trade one of them, and it might be Hurts, right? Just because he's older and you'll be paying him, it might be Hurts, and then you have a cheap, kind of almost like what they did with Carson Wentz. Once Jalen Hurts developed, they were able to trade Carson Wentz for a boatload of picks. And maybe they might not do that with Jalen Hurts because he had delivered them two Super Bowl appearances and a title. But still, okay, fine. You trade Jalen Hurts then. I mean, Jalen Milroe then. So I do actually really like that idea. At 161, Elijah Huzzy from North Carolina. Again, just more corner depth, more corner depth. They lost Darius Slay, um, a guy that could come in again. Probably have got to develop him a little bit at first, but could be part of that rotation going forward. Uh, at 171, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, edge from Georgia. Again, Georgia player that falls to you. Why not? And then at 238, Jaquarius Marks from USC. So this guy is a guy that has all the potential in the world, but he doesn't read the line yet well. He doesn't really know how to be a running back. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, oh my goodness, you put this guy behind Saquon Barkley where he can learn a little bit. Again, come in when you want to give Saquon some rest, keep him fresh for the playoffs. This guy could be an animal on that team with that offensive line, with those guys teaching him how to be a running back. My God, at 238, like that's what, when you get to that part of the draft, those are the type of swings you take. Because like, hey, low risk, potentially very high reward. If it doesn't work out, he's a 238th pick in the draft. Who cares? But if it does work out, I love that. I really that's this is probably my favorite pick for them. A guy that could be an animal as a running back that they kind of have to develop a little bit, but it's fine. You have the best running back in football already that he's going to learn from. Yeah, I'm sorry for the rest of the league if this is what the Eagles end up doing. I'm just gonna put it like that. All right, the Patriots at four. Will Campbell. Uh, nothing needs to be said about this. So this is the pick that everybody expects them to make. So I just went ahead and did that. At 38, Alec Iomaner. Again, just a different type of receiver that they're looking for, and I love that for them. At 69, Travion Henderson was still on the board, getting them some more weapons. Um, along with Xavier Restrepo at 77, I just thought was great value, give him a nice slot option. You know, you got your guy in Drake May boosted his offense to make sure that you can get the most out of him, especially on his rookie deal, right? Then at 106, Vernon Broughton still there on the board. Great value. Boasted that defensive line. I know Lord, what's their coach's name? Vrabel. I know Vrabel would love that. 144, Chase Lunt, tackle. Again, a guy that could probably play guard if you really think Will Campbell could hack it as a tackle. Um, bolstering that offensive line. That's what they have to do. You have to protect Drake May. You got to get him some weapons. I did all that so far. At 164, Brady Cook, they traded away uh, um, Milton. And so getting another backup quarterback would make a lot of sense here at 164. And then at 220, Zeke Biggers, defensive line from Georgia Tech again. This is another guy you could potentially put at depth at the offensive line at 220, best player available. The Jets. All right. Armand Membu out of Missouri. This is a guy that a lot of people think the Jets will take. I like the idea, so that's what I did there too. 42 Shamar Turner. Again, great value. Getting him at but if it wasn't tackle, a lot of people think defensive line was the second biggest thing that we're going to need. Getting Shamar Turner at 42 is a fantastic get. At 73, Trey Harris still on the board. Love the value here. Getting them another weapon alongside of Garrett Wilson. At 110, Gunnar Helm from Texas. Again, more weapons for Justin Fields to utilize. At 144, Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. Again, another guy on that defensive line you could put bolster up. At 162, Quinn Ewers. Getting that backup quarterback is never a bad thing. A guy that can has potential. You just got to develop him. At 186, again, this is at the part of the draft where some teams I'm like, I don't know what to get for you guys. Every time I turn on a Jets game, they're missing field goals. So I was like, you know what? Why not get a kicker? And one thing I know about Ben Sauls, if you can kick in Heinz Stadium, yes, I'm still calling it Heinz Field. I'm not calling it Acrisure. But if you can kick there, you can kick anywhere. So. Yeah, you can kick in MetLife, which is also a very windy place to kick. So if you can kick in Pittsburgh, you can definitely kick in MetLife. So I thought it was a great get. And then at 207, Tommy Hill still being on the board, I thought was a steal for them. And so that's what I did there. The Dolphins, oh my goodness, the Dolphins I had more picks than I can do with. And I added some more picks because I did do a Jalen Ramsey trade. So that 97 is from that. So I knew I was gonna trade Jalen Ramsey. So at 13, Jade Barron was a must. So I had to get that. 48 Omar Norman lot. Again, a guy that I really like. Boasted that defensive line. At 97, that's the pick you got for trading Jalen Ramsey, getting Wyatt Milam. Probably gonna have to play guard for you guys at first, but that's okay. That's okay. A guy that again you guys could probably coach up to be maybe your tackle of the future. 98 the very next pick, Azariah Thomas from Florida State. I know he didn't run well, but he's a big, strong corner. Again, got rid of Jalen Ramsey. You probably already needed some corner help a little bit, so I didn't mind double dipping that corner there. 116 Samuel Brown from Miami. Um, Another receiver in case I didn't have them trade Tyreek Hill. The only reason why I did Jalen Ramsey is because the Dolphins are the ones that came out and said we're trading Jalen Ramsey, right? Tyreek Hill, it's will they, won't they? The Dolphins came out and said we about to trade Jalen Ramsey. So that's why I wanted to make sure I got some corners. But just in case you did trade Tyreek Hill, I wanted to get another receiver. Again, a guy that went to Miami, so I'm sure they're very comfortable with him. At 135, Dylan Gabriel, again, it makes a lot of sense too. Unfortunately, has a hard time staying healthy. I think Gabriel will flourish in that offense, to be honest with you. It makes a lot of sense. It basically another Tua. So I love and maybe a Tua with a stronger arm at that. So at 135, I think great value. At 150, and then another guard boosted our offensive line. At 153, Jaquiz Hunter, again, I just thought was best player available. I know they like to have their back rotation, but because of that, they always seem to be adding running backs, so I didn't mind adding one here. At 231, Thomas Fadonal from Nebraska. I know they utilized their tight ends a lot last year. That's kind of when they had their resurgence. So I figured adding some depth at that position would be a good thing. At 253, Joey Slackman from Florida. Again, at this point, best player available. We kind of hit a lot of the things that they needed to get. And so I'm just getting best player available. And then again at 256. I said, screw it. Kicker from Miami. Why not? Because at this point, I done drafted you a whole new roster. I don't know what else to get you at this point. And again, it's 256. So that was the Miami draft. The Bills. Okay, so if you saw the Steelers one, I spoiled this already, but I had them trade up to get Kenneth Grant, a guy that I really like, a guy I wanted for the Steelers. But I traded up to get Kenneth Grant there. Uh, again, I'm gonna keep saying it. If you're any team that plays the Chiefs and you watch that Super Bowl, you have to be saying to yourself, that's the blueprint. We have to get a nasty defensive line. We have to be able to stop the run. We have to be able to create pressure without having to blitz. So you see it. This entire draft is defense, 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 because that's how we're going to beat the Chiefs if we're ever going to beat them in the playoffs. At least they do decent in the regular season. It's the playoffs. So Kenneth Grant is going to be the lead catalyst to that. At 56, Carson Sargent from UCLA. Now, granted, I'm not the biggest fan of getting West Coast players to play on East Coast teams, but at the time, he was the best linebacker available, so I wanted to do that. At 109, Savion Jones, edge from LSU. Again, bolster that defensive line, bolster that defensive line, bolster that defensive line. At 132, Robert Longerbeam from Rutgers. If I'm sure the Bills know firsthand that Rutgers, despite them not being able to win football games, produce some pretty good corners. Robert Longerbeam is another one that he should be pretty good for them. Add to that room. At 152, I traded to get Billy Bowman Jr., safety from Oklahoma. That could all they could also use a help with safety. Again, I thought the value was great there. 170, Antoine Powell Ryland, edge out of Virginia Tech. Again, we're going to bolster this defensive line. We're going to get guys that can put pressure on the quarterback and make our job, our lives easier. And then at 173, Zy Alexander, again, another corner. Just again, I just want to bolster that secondary. I want to bolster that defense. If you're going to beat the Chiefs, that's how you have to do it. Generate pressure, cover on the back end, make their lives a living hell every time they step on the field. And you know you have a quarterback that can score with the best of them. So that's already good. Now on the defensive side, you have to be able to slow this offense down if you ever want to want to beat them. All right, the Raiders. The Raiders were interesting because you could do a number of different things with them. I did the Ashton Genty thing. I liked the idea, so I said, why not? At six, I know it goes against everything I said about being a running back away, but I also understand that this is probably a win now team. You don't bring in a Pete Carroll at this stage of his career. You don't bring a Geno Smith at this stage of his career if you're not trying to win now. They have a really good offensive line. Ashton Genty could be a beast. I like it. And then at 37, Michael Ibuka, get a wide receiver. They need wide receiver help. It's a guy that will be a great slot player for them, along with Brock Bowers. Um, I love that idea of just giving weapons for Geno to work with. Um, again, especially utilizing the play action game, looking in the middle of the field where linebackers and safeties are most affected by it. I love that. 68 Darian Porter, great value, help with that cornerback room. And then I doubled down with Jacob Parrish from Kansas State. Love that. Again, bolstering those corners they needed. They desperately need that. At 143, and I needed Peoples from Virginia Tech. Great value, bolstering that defensive line, which they need. Again, you're in the same division as the Chiefs. We have the blueprint to beat them. Follow the blueprint. It will never steer you wrong. At 180, Ricky White staying in Vegas. I love the value here. Ricky White can be that outside guy that you need. And so what I like about this is you have two kind of possession receivers. And I think that's what Pete Carroll wants to do on offense, right? Run the ball, time of possession, win on third downs. The only thing now we would have to do is try to get them like that deep threat to really take the top off the defense and keep a defense honest. But I like what we did here. Howard Cross defensive line again, uh, bolstering the defensive line. You got to do it. You brought back Max Crosby. Give him some help on that defensive line. This is how you could be successful, especially against your arch nemesis in the Chiefs. At 215, Cody Lindenberg, linebacker from Minnesota. Uh, this will help with that defense as well. Just bolstering the things that you need to do. And then RJ Ogden, edge from Notre Dame. Just some edge help, some depth. Again, that line's going to be critical at 222. I thought it was a good swing. So why not? All right, the Broncos. So if you saw the Cleveland video, you know that I traded up to get Shador Sanders. This is who I traded up with. And at 33, I was going to take Quinshawn Junkins. But PFF has Dylan Sampson rated higher. And then I thought about it. And I said, wait a minute. An explosive running back from Tennessee. Wouldn't Sean Payton love that? I mean, yeah. So why not? So that's what I did there. Dylan Sampson, 33. Um, after the trade back. And then at 51, Jalen Royals. So getting that possession receiver that they want, especially in the slot. And now you're starting to see how this offense, the way Sean Payton wants it to be run, can now be utilized. And then at 67, as part of that trade back, we got TJ Sanders and CJ West to put on that defensive line. Oh my goodness. Now we're really cooking with gas. Again, I'm gonna keep saying it. To beat the Chiefs, you know what you need. Great run game, a great way to slow the clock down with receivers as well, and then a defensive line that can give them hell. That's what we need, and that's what we did. Broncos, this is, as you can see, I traded with them a lot. 134 got Jonah Monahan, I think that's how you would pronounce that, from USC, both of the offensive line, which they desperately need. And then at 165, Ben Jurasek from Georgia. I know they brought in Evan Ingram, but this guy could be, maybe a longer term vision for that. At 168, Curtis Rourke. Again, I kind of just like the value. By the way, shout out Bobcats, a former Bobcat. OU, oh yeah. A guy that I think would thrive in Sean Payton's offense that could run the offense really well and would be a good backup for them. At Marcus Yarns, another running back from Delaware. Again, best player available. And again, giving them a very explosive running back 1-2 punch, which again I think Sean Payton's going to want to do. And then at 197, Jeremy Crenshaw, punter from Florida. Again, at this point, they had so many picks. They had so many picks. That's why I was trading up and down a lot with them. Um, at this point, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what else to get you. Here, take a punter. Somebody's going to draft some special teams. Why not be y'all? Okay, the Chargers. This was another team I had to get a little fancy with because of all the picks they had. But at 22, Colston Loveland from Michigan, that's self-explanatory. At 55, Oluwafemi Oladejo or Oladejo from UCLA. Made sense. Right there in their backyard. I'm sure they're familiar with them. They need edge help, so that was kind of self-explanatory. Torrey Holton at 86, I thought was great value. Getting them hopefully an outside guy that they can use at receiver. Right now they kind of have they have Ladd McConkey and they have and now they have Colston Loveland. So the inside passing game is good. Getting another outside guy would be necessary. Elijah Rob I'm sorry, JJ Peguis, if that I don't know how you pronounce that, from Ole Miss. Again, defensive line. I'm gonna keep saying it. Same division as the Chiefs. Y'all get the spiel by now. Um, 139, Elijah Roberts edge from SMU. Again, just doubling down. They lost the boat. I think they brought back Khalil Mack, but they lost Bosa. But even still, getting some edge help that could be your long-term answer at that position makes sense. At 181, Kobe King was great value, getting that linebacker there. Um, at 199, Keandre Lambert Smith. This is a guy that was considered a deep threat. And Auburn doesn't really run that type of offense, so he wasn't utilized the way he was supposed to. But I got a feeling with Justin Herbert, he would love a guy like this. So a guy that doesn't have to contribute every down, but like somebody that when you want to go five wide and you need to push the ball down the field, you could bring him in and give again Herbert a deep threat target that he would love. And at 209, Craig Woodson, safety out of Cal. Again, just good value. Pac-12 school, well, now ACC school, I'm saying, but West Coast school that I'm sure they are familiar with and comfortable with. And so I thought 209 great value. All right, the Chiefs, the team everybody's still trying to beat, unless your name is the Philadelphia Eagles. I had them trade up to get Derek Harmon. Um, I love that of him with Chris Jones on that defensive line to learn from and kind of be their face of that defensive line group going forward. Love it. 63 Elijah Arroyo. They got to replace Travis Kelce at some point. This is a perfect opportunity to do it. 66 Cameron Williams. Probably will play guard for them at first, and hopefully they could develop into a tackle, but we'll see. Landon Jackson from Arkansas, edge at 95. Again, it's like the value. I got another guard in Miles Frazier from LSU. Again, hopefully Cameron Williams could be your tackle of the future, and Miles Frazier could then plug in that guard, but they need offensive line help bad, so doubling down on offensive line is never a bad thing. Dean Clark, Fresno State at 251 again to low the value. It makes a lot of sense to add to that room. And then at 257, LaQuint Allen, running back Syracuse, just adding some running back depth. It worked before with Isaiah Pacheco. It could work again. So why not? All right, the Panthers. All right, so I did get Jalen Walker, but as you can see, I traded back. Everybody's been saying Jalen Walker's the pick, Jalen Walker's the pick, Jalen Walker's the pick. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I kind of just don't like it at 8. I know they've drafted linebackers early, Luke Kuechly, things like that of that nature, so they're not afraid to take a linebacker that early. But for me, it's like if you could get him at 16, why not get him at 16? So that's what I did. I traded back and I got him at 16. And then at 57, Nick Emmanwori is still on the board. They need safeties, and he's one of the, if not the best safety in the class. So I love taking that pick at 57. At 74, Jalen Noel from Iowa State. Great receiver at the slot that could replace Adam Thielen at some point and give Bryce Young another reliable weapon. At 78, traded to get Kyle Kennard. I believe this is the pick we got from the trade back. Yeah. Um, Getting Kyle Kennard, an edge out of South Carolina. We know they need edge. We know they love their South Carolina players. So him and Nick Emmanwori made a lot of sense. At 111, Kobe Bryant from Kansas. Again, great value here. I know they brought back their corners, but they can still use corner depth. Um, and even then, that might not be a long-term replacement. This Kobe Bryant could probably play the slot as well. So I love that for them. 114, Ty Felton. Again, great value. He's more of an outside guy. But again, a guy that could be a good possession receiver for Bryce Young as Leggett continues to develop. At 140, Kamen Rucker, edge UNC. Again, they need edge help bad, especially guys that could be there for the future. Taking, last time they took an edge from UNC, it worked out pretty well. So I love that. And this has kind of always been my thing too. Like I love the idea of having the two Carolina edges on there, one from UNC, one from South Carolina. Those are two schools they recruit highly. They like to take players from. Having that South Carolina flavor on the edge for them is great. At 146, Trevor Etienne. Again, I like the value here. Jonathan Brooks might not be back for most of the season, so just adding to that running back room would be great. Um, I know they brought back Chuba Hubbard, but again, Jonathan Brooks might not be there this year, and this way you don't have to rush him back, right? You drafted this kid in the second round, and you kind of I think they feel that they rushed him back last year. This year, you don't have to. Bring him back. Hopefully, he's a star running back that you're hoping that he would be, but you don't want him to continue to get hurt. So, getting some more running back depth is key there. 163, Willie Lampkin, and Cooper Mays, just offensive line help. Their offensive line is decent, but getting some depth there and then maybe some potential starters on the inside of the line is important. And so, again, and those are two schools that, again, they usually like to scout and recruit from. So it made a lot of sense. Okay, the Saints at nine. I did not take Will Shador Sanders. If you haven't seen the Browns video, yeah, I just didn't do it. I love Will Johnson. This guy was supposed to be a top five, maybe even a top three pick. And he got hurt this year, so he didn't get a chance to stamp his claim at that position. But I still love the idea of him being a top 10 pick. And the Saints sneakily need some corner help. So again, I love it here at nine. I really do. I love it here at nine. At 40, getting Princely and Umanielen from Ole Miss. They've needed edge and defensive line help forever at this point. So let's go ahead and bolster that. 71, RJ Harvey, a nice young back to add to the mix on that offense. 93, Anthony Belton, a tackle. Hopefully he can be a starter going forward. Maybe play some guard right now. But he's got some promise and upside. Dante Thornton at 112, I just love the fit. I mean, I just love the value, and I do love the fit. Giving them something a little bit different from what they have. This dude is a deep threat, prop nightmare. Um, give them that and that offense, tall, fast receiver. Maybe a little raw right now in terms of being an actual receiver, but I think that's okay. They got some guys that can do that. They needed they needed some more big play type of guys, and so that's what Dante Thornton could be for them. 131, Cameron Jackson, defensive line from Florida. Again, they've needed defensive line help for a long time. And so we're doing that. At 184, Riley Leonard. I know Derek Carr is injured, so that's where the Shador stuff is coming into play. Um, I honestly think they might say screw it and just roll with Spencer Rattler and maybe be in the Arch Manning sweepstakes next year. How fitting would that be? But you get Riley Leonard here, it makes sense. It's a low risk, high reward type of move. He could probably play well in the system, and it makes sense. Then 238, Desmond Watson is a huge individual, like just a mountain of a man. At 248, that again, those are the type of swings you make in the seventh round. I love that pick for them. If they could develop him into a monster, because he has the physical. I mean, was he 400 something pounds? Like he could be a beast. So, yeah, I love that idea of them taking a risk on him at 248. All right, the Falcons. Shamar Stewart at 15. They need edge help. They need defensive help, and so that's what we did. We did that, and we got Demetrius Knight at 46, linebacker out of South Carolina. At 127, Seth McLaughlin from Ohio State did that via trade. They need a new center. They lost their center to the Bears, I believe. And so adding a center was key. At 201, Jalen Lane from receiver from Virginia Tech is adding to that receiver room, which they could use some more help. They have Drake London, they have Kyle Pitts, but adding some other guys there would be great. Fentrell Cyphers, a corner from Florida State. They need another corner opposite of Lord, I forgot the corner they got now, but they need some more corner help. So I like that. Cody Simon, another linebacker. Uh, at 206. I just like it was best player available in my opinion, so I was able to do that. At 218, O'Donnell Fortune, another corner. Again, I doubled up on a lot of things on the defense because that's what they desperately need um, for them to take the next step. And again, at this stage in the draft, getting depth piece is not bad. And then at 242, Timothy McKay from NC State. Again, some more depth on that offensive line, especially interior offensive line where they need some help there. The Buccaneers at 14, Jahad came with again another pick that a lot of people are thinking that this is going to be the pick. It makes sense. They like their linebackers. They need a young guy for the future. It works at there. At 47, Michael Williams was still on the board, and I'm like, yeah, let's go ahead and and get him. So we were able to do that at 47. At 84, Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky was still on the board again. Great value. Probably be a slot guy for you, but that's okay. Um, I love the fit. I love the value there. At 160, via trade, Jonas Slunker from Virginia as a safety help. At 227, another trade, Kobe Hudson, wide receiver from UCF, as well as McWilliams from UCF, two guys I just thought they would be comfortable with, that they probably know very well, and can add to those respective rooms. All right, the Chicago Bears at 10, Mike Green edge from Marshall. I know there's a lot of chatter about maybe they go tight end. I know there's a lot of chatter about uh maybe running back, but you'll see I had a plan for running back, so I didn't go running back. Um, I just like I just like the value there. Mike Green, um, they need edge help as well, so I got that. At 39, I got Caleb Johnson, and then let's skip to 72 real quick. I got Jaden Blue. I'm not gonna lie, I saw this on I think the Goat House, and I love the idea of instead of getting Ashton Genty or even Amari Hampton at 10. Why not get both Caleb Johnson and Jaden Blue, and then you literally will have your Gibbs and Montgomery replacements, right? Ben Johnson coming from Detroit. You get Caleb Johnson, you get Jaden Blue. That's literally your David Montgomery, Jameer Gibbs for your team. And I said, you know what? I like that a lot. So I did the same thing. Caleb Johnson at 39, Jaden Blue at 72. And in between both those picks, Kevin Winston Jr. was still on the board at 41. I said, yes, thank you, please. And at 179, in a trade, I got Tonka Hemingway from South Carolina defensive line. I know they spent some money to get some defensive line help, but getting some young players at depth at that position is key as well. At 192, John Williams, a tackle out of Cincinnati. Again, I know they spent some money on their offensive line, but getting some depth would be great. At 223, Anton Wells Jr. was still on the board. It was just best player available. And I said, yeah, why not? And then at 240, again, Simeon Barrow Jr. from Miami, best player available. And seventh round pick, why not add some depth to the defensive line? All right, the Packers. At 23, we took Trey Amos. Again, they don't take offensive players on the first round, so you knew there was going to be a defensive player. Trey Amos made a lot of sense there. At 54, we got Braden Swinston, edge out of LSU. I just love the value there. Get some help on the edge. Why not? At 87, Isaac Tesla from Arkansas, big receiver. Uh, Gives them a little bit different from what they already have there. At 124, Logan Brown, offensive line, or offensive tackle, I should say, from Kansas. Love the value there. Sebastian Castro, I love the value here. For 159, Sebastian Castro, I absolutely love the value there. I couldn't pass that up. At 198, uh, another edge from Adamon ooh, Hassanin. I think that's his name. I probably butchered that. I'm so sorry, my brother. From Boise State. Again, it was best player available. I remember he was a guy that was just kept falling and falling and falling and falling. I said, you know what? I got to take him here. At 237, Will Rogers, just to get a backup quarterback at 237, why not? And at 250, a guard from Wisconsin. I figured, yeah, that makes sense. That's something the Packers would probably like at 250, so why not? The Minnesota Vikings. Okay. Well, I said it. If you missed the Dolphins portion of the video, I did have them trade Jalen Ramsey, and the Vikings were the team I had trade for Jalen Ramsey. I figured originally in my head I was gonna do Baltimore. Um, And I already forgot what I did in the third round for Baltimore, but I really liked the pick for Baltimore, so I just did that. And then when Minnesota came up, I said they do need a corner. Why not just go trade Jalen Ramsey? And so that's what I did. I just gave him pick 97 for Jalen Ramsey. Um, and so yeah, so at 24, I took Calvin Banks, bolstering that offensive line. The offensive line kind of fell apart towards the end of the year last year, so they definitely need to bolster that. Uh, and then again, getting Jalen Ramsey uh helped with the back end of that defense, getting corner at 158, traded for Bashul Tootin from Virginia Tech. Um, getting him some running back help at 187. Riley Mills, defensive line, bolstering that defensive line is never a bad thing. At 214, Caleb Ranshaw from Tulane. Again, I just love the value there. They needed some help on the back end of that defense. So now with Jalen Ramsey and now with Ranshaw, really good in at 255. I was like, I have to get Ollie Gordon drafted. I had to. And it just made sense for the Vikings to do it. Him and Tootin could be an amazing 1-2 punch in the backfield. Again, that balanced attack. I keep saying it. That's how you win. Balanced attack, good defense. It makes sense, especially when you have a young quarterback, right? We know you have weapons on the outside, but running the ball and keeping him honest and giving him like a security blanket with the 1-2 punch at the running back position made a lot of sense. And again, Ollie Gordon at 255 is a steal. I know he's been slipping in drafts, but at 255, that is an absolute steal. All right, the Detroit Lions at 31, they traded back and they were able to get Gray Zabel, so I like the value for that for them. At 60, JT Tumalau, uh great value pick for them. At 102, Josiah Stewart. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you. This is probably like the one and only like mental mistake I made. Not because Josiah Stewart's not a good player, but I think for a split second I forgot they had Aiden Hutchinson. And so I was like, they don't need two edges, they just needed one. But at the same time, I mean, it doesn't hurt to always get more pass rushing depth. So not the worst thing in the world, I guess. But yeah, I think I did forget for just a second they already had Aiden Hutchinson, so I did not need to double dip at edge. So that's my fault. Um, but yeah, sorry. At 130, Barrett Carter, Clemson. Again, just love the value, love the fit. At 133, Tez Johnson, giving him another receiver. And I love the value there. 133, like that's great value for Tez. I know he's a little bit lighter, um, but he gives them a different dynamic on that offense. And again, the value at 133, I think is great. At 196, defense also continuing to bolster that defensive line with Tim Smith from Alabama. I know they had a ton of injuries last year and they want some depth on that defensive line. And maybe that was my thinking with getting Josiah Stewart as well, just having that depth. Maybe. I don't know. Because I remember when I was making this slide, I said, wait, I double dipped the edge. Why'd I do that? But maybe, so like I said, maybe I forgot that they had Aiden Hutchinson, or maybe I was just thinking just get him depth because they needed the depth. So we'll see. But like I said, I'll also admit that maybe it was just a brain fart. At 228, Dante Trader Jr. from Maryland. Again, I just love the value there. I love the value there. And at 244, I said, ooh, a tight end from Iowa to pair up with Sam Laporta. At 244, I love that. I love that a lot. So that was my Detroit Lions draft. Um, yeah, I like it. Okay, then 49ers at 11, I took Walter Nolan here. I love this fit for them. I really do. Really do. Him and that defensive line would be disgusting. At 43, Siobhan Ravel, again, a guy that's supposed to be a first round pick. He tore his ACL, so I understand why he's slipping. At 43, that's a steal. I don't care what anybody says, that's a steal. At 75, Charles Grant out of William and Mary. At 75, I love the value. At 100, Jared Ivey, Walter Nolan's teammate. Put him on that defensive line at 100. Love the value. 113, Noel Williams from Cal, adding to that corner room along with Siobhan Ravel. They lost a lot of secondary help in the free agency, so double dipping at corner is never a bad thing. At 138, Devin Neal again. I just love. It was best player available. Um, um, they love their running backs. They're a team that wants to be able to run the ball. That's a key part of their offense. And Christian McCaffrey is never, healthy. Unfortunately, as great as he is, he's never healthy. So adding to that running back room is key. 147 Kyle McCord. Again, they need their quarterbacks to be healthy. When their quarterbacks are not healthy, they cannot run the offense the way they need to run. Having somebody like Kyle McCord, who a lot of people think might be the best thrower of the football in this draft, makes a lot of sense. Have him learn that system as a backup. I like it. 157 Connor Colby from Iowa in a trade. Uh, Getting some offensive line depth is good at this stage of the draft, along with adding even some more defensive line depth um, at 235 with Jay Toya. I like it a lot. And then at 252, Jalen Connors, tight end from Texas Tech. Again, that stage of the draft, a guy that maybe could be a Kittle replacement or at least a complementary piece in that offense. I like it. Okay, the Cardinals, they traded up with the Panthers to take Josh Simmons. I know some of you guys are gonna be like, oh my God, why would you do that? It's terrible. Josh Simmons was a guy before he got hurt, was looking like tackle one in the draft. Josh Simmons is a really good football player. Josh Simmons went to Ohio State, and I believe Arizona's offensive line coach is from Ohio State, if I remember correctly. And I believe they already have an offensive lineman from Ohio State. So it made a lot of sense to go ahead and do this trade, in my opinion. Josh Simmons is a guy I think is going to be a lot higher on some teams' board than others. I'm just banking that the Cardinals are one of those teams he's higher on the board on. Um, so that's why I did it. So I traded up to get Josh Simmons. At 53, I made another trade to get Tyreek Williams from Ohio State. Again, really, they need some defensive line help. I love the value there, so I went and did that. At 115, Ashton Gelati from Louisville, getting them some edge help. Again, love the value. At 121, Mello Dotson and another trade from Kansas um, to bolster that secondary. At 169, I could not pass up on the value of Deion Walker. I know he's a polarizing prospect. I know that a lot of people just question his motor and question a lot of things about him, but the tools and the upside is undeniable. This guy was supposed to be a first round pick. I know he didn't show it this year, but again, at 169, I mean, come on, what are we talking about here? At 177, getting Nick Nash, another receiver to add to that lineup, I thought was great. And then at 225, Nico Reed from Oregon. Again, another cornerback in depth piece at 225. I just love the value. The Seattle Seahawks. Okay, I knew I was going to go offensive line heavy in this draft. And so at 18, with Matthew Golden still being on the board, I said, I kind of like it. I kind of like it. Now, if you watch the Dallas portion of the video, I know you're sitting there saying, but Brett, didn't you say you didn't like Matthew Golden for the Cowboys because he's another CeeDee Lamb? So why would you get another JSN for Seattle? Slight difference. JSN is slot only. I think Matthew Golden can play outside and gives you slot versatility. So does CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's an outside guy that plays in the slot a lot as well. So that's why I said that's two of the same thing. I don't know if I like that for the Cowboys. This is different where JSN is strictly a slot guy. Matthew Golden can be your outside guy that you can play in the slot in spots if you want to. A little bit different. Um, and again, best player available is the guy that was at 18. I said, well, how do I pass this up? They do need receivers, so why not? At 50, this is where we go with that offensive line. Ozzy Trapillo from Boston College, and then right back at 52 with Jonas Savea from Arizona. He could probably play guard for you right away, which would be great. And then at 82, right back to the offensive line with Jared Wilson, center from Georgia. So back to back to back picks. We're getting that offensive line together. You know you have to protect Sam Darnold. You know he does not like having pressure, especially from right in front of him. He'll start to see ghosts. We saw that towards the end of the year last year with the Vikings, where he kind of came back to the down to earth when the offensive line wasn't protecting him as well as they should be. So even though I went wide receiver early, the next three picks back to back to back, we got that offensive line together. And then 92, Jordan Birch made a lot of sense. Again, great value there, getting some edge help. At 137, Tyler Shuck from Louisville. This is where he should be drafted. I know he's getting some first round buzz and some third round buzz. 137 is more accurate where he should go. And I like the value there. 172, Andrew Armstrong. So now that's your DK replacement. Big, tall receiver, can be the jump ball guy for Sam Darnold to throw to. So I like that. You have Matthew Golden and JSN who kind of give you the versatility aspect and can get open for Sam Darnold. And then Andrew Armstrong is the guy that's like, hey, if all else fails, throw it up and he'll go get it. Love that. Um, at 175, Mitchell Evans, tight end from Notre Dame. Again, just uh, I love the value there, and it made a lot of sense to do that. And then at 223, Junior Tafuna, defensive line from Utah, made a lot of sense. Just bolstering that defensive line. And then Jay Higgins, linebacker from Iowa, 234, just low the value. What can I say? Um, Made a lot of sense to do that. Okay, with the Rams at 26, Ben Morrison. Again, I love the value. Again, a guy that was supposed to be a top pick in the draft. He got hurt. Wasn't able to really showcase it. But at 26, I just love the value there. They need corner help. If he's the guy that we think he is, this is a steal. I don't care what anybody says. It's a steal. At 90, Terrence Ferguson at tight end. I love the value there, giving them another weapon to play with. Makes a lot of sense to me. At 101, Jeffrey Bosa is going back to Oregon, this time at linebacker. They need some linebacker help. Love the value there. At 118, Will Howard. Again, this is where he should be drafted. This makes more sense. Backup, Matthew Stafford, a guy that you could develop, a guy that should work well in that system, and maybe he's your future, and you get him at 118. That is perfect drafting. At 190, Jack Nelson from Wisconsin to bolster that offensive line. And at 195, Jalen Smith from USC. Again, great value. A guy that I'm sure they're familiar with, and it made a lot of sense at 195. Okay, so that's the entire draft. If you're still here, I appreciate you. I really do. You all are a real one. Love y'all. This was fun. Again, it was very exhausting. It took a couple days to do this, but not nearly as bad as last year. If y'all remember last year, I had to watch my niece and nephew one day and I had to travel another day, so it really hurt in terms of when I was able to get this done. This time I was able to pace myself. I think I did a pretty good job with most of the teams. I really do. Obviously some teams are gonna be better than others just based on picks and da 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 da. But I really do think I really do think most people should be happy with what I got for their team. And if their team does something similar in the real draft, I think these teams should be happy. Um, for those thinking like, oh, I want to do this, da da da, the one thing I think I will do next time, because I do want to try to do this every year. And if you guys watch and share it and subscribe and all that good stuff, I will do it again next year. The one thing I might do, which is another tedious step, but I think it'll help me in the back end, is before I do it, I need to go through every team and see what draft picks they have, or at least how many draft picks they have. I don't need to do the individual draft picks, but I need to make a note of who has a lot of picks, who doesn't have a lot of picks. Are they front loaded? Are they back loaded? Because I think that was the hardest part. There's some teams where they just had a million picks and you're trying to figure out what to do with them. Um, and you don't really realize it until you're in it. Um, and there's some teams that were very backloaded with a lot of their picks. So it's like, oh, there was one team, if I remember correctly, they had like 4 6th round picks and like 3 7th round picks. So it's like, What am I supposed to do with that? And you don't realize it until you're already in the sixth round. So at that point, there's nothing you could do. You know what I mean? You just got to stay and pick the picks. Um, and so yeah, that was, and I think it was the Chiefs, if I remember correctly. One of the teams had like a almost like 100 pick gap in between picks. So they all their picks basically were on the back end. And again, you don't realize it. I don't think I even realized it until I was making their slide where I was like, wait, this can't be right. And I'm like looking through my notes. I'm like, I had to have missed a pick somewhere, and I didn't. It was they literally like picked at 90 something, and then they didn't pick again to like 20 something. I'm like, good Lord. Um, that would have been nice to know at the time so that they would have been a team that I would have moved up with to kind of spread out the draft a little bit better. But then even then you got to find a suitable partner because who's gonna move back that many spaces? Um, so then you probably got to find a team that has a lot of picks on the front end, but not on the back end, so that they could say, "Oh, we already picked a lot of guys. We can afford to move back some and spread this out a little bit." Or maybe we have a lot of picks in the middle round. So again, if even if this pick goes all the way back, we have plenty of picks in between to still make it work. Stuff like that. So yeah, that's probably what I need to do next time. Again, it's probably going to be a very tedious step to go through every team and just get a general consensus of what their picks are and how many they have. But I think it will help me in the drafting process to know ahead of time, hey, make sure you're monitoring so you could trade up for this team and you could trade back with that team, right? Because that's another thing. If the team doesn't have a lot of picks, that's the team you want to keep trading backwards. They could get more picks and kind of spread it out a little bit so that every team can stay in that good 6 to 8 pick range to make it easier. Um, 'Cause yeah, when teams got like 10 plus picks, it's like, bro, what am I supposed to do with that? But yeah, it was fun. I love doing it. It makes you appreciate other people that do these mock drafts. It makes you appreciate the teams that have to do a mock to do the draft for real, for real. Knowing all these prospects inside and out, knowing what will work for their schemes and their fits and their roster and everything like that. But yeah, it's an exciting time. I can't wait for Thursday. And yeah, I just hope my teams draft well. So yeah, but if you're still here, appreciate you. You guys are real ones. Please like, share, and subscribe and join us next time as we continue to discuss other people's excellence. Deuces. Happy draft season, y'all.